Welcome back to the Warcraft news. It has been an interesting, tumultuous time, and today we've got so much to talk about. Sweeping class changes, the direct future of World of Warcraft, event updates, and Hallow's End. It's got really cool new rewards like this one that mean that, yes, I am now trying to get as many tasty treats as I can. So, let's get into it. Kicking it off with the more meta news about where WoW is going. If you've opted into the public test realm, you'll actually see 1107 on your Battle.net app. Now, if you try to load it up, it's not like the PTR is actually there, but it appearing in the app does suggest that it will be soon. Now, the release date for that patch is almost certainly not going to be following Blizzard's 8-week cadence, because if it did, that would be December 17th, which seems like a terrible time to release a patch. What seems a lot more likely then is early January, and I absolutely would count that as a good thing. Patch 1105, I mean, for all of its inherent pros and cons, it definitely needed more time to stick the landing. Not necessarily more resources, just a bit more time. Anyway, after 1107, which we can expect to test soon, it will be patch 11.1. Currently, I'd say that's expected to be late February, maybe early March, and it will be our first major patch. Now, there are NPC conversations added in patch 1105 that have us thinking it's going to be an island off the coast of Khazalgar, with the other end of Bellular on it, as well as a raid that involves the main goblin city of Undermine. Either way, we'll find out very soon though, because of Warcraft Direct, which will go live on November 13th. And it's a little curious. The blog mentions World of Warcraft, Hearthstone Rumble, and Orcs vs Humans. Yes, it references Warcraft 1, but not Warcraft 3 Reforged. Now, that could actually make a lot of sense. This is all framed around the anniversary, and yep, it's the 20th anniversary of WoW, but it's also the 30th anniversary of Warcraft 1. Now, Blizzard didn't say Warcraft 3 Reforged, but they did actually make a call out to the original RTS. And you may just think, okay, these are random factoids in a blog post, why are you even talking about it? Well, there's another discovery, and it certainly is suspicious. Warcraft 3 Reforged version 2.0 was briefly seen on an internal test server. I believe otherwise it's on game version 1.3.7, so there's an internal test server, it said 2.0 for a bit, and then they scrubbed it away. We don't know what's going on, but there could be something happening with Reforged, and maybe there's a reason why Blizzard are framing that in terms of Warcraft 1. Just like how I am, in fact, framing today's sponsor. MeUndies. They make the most comfortable loungewear and underwear that there is. And the thing is, Northern Ireland is always humid, and that's where MeUndies materials just shines. This micromodal fabric is amazing. It's breathable, it's quick drying, moisture wicking, anti-odor. The type of fabric that you just you touch it and you think, oh, I want to wear that. It's exactly what you want. And if you go to MeUndies.com/Bellular and use promo code Bellular, you'll get 20% off your order and free shipping. Their underwear is top-notch, but it's also fun. Now, we can go with our more basic colors. You can also, of course, get all of the different print options. There's these, there's the ones that I have with the beaver on them, and plenty of others. And of the many different cuts, the ball caddy stands out. Yes, we're talking about balls. You see, inventory management is an important thing, especially for us. These mean less friction. They've got a place for everything to go. That means less friction, more comfort. They are such an upgrade. So their gear is super comfy, the fabric's amazing, and it was responsibly sourced from partners that take care of their workers. And if you're not happy with your first pair, well, they will cover the cost. So you can be your most comfy self this whole autumn. And to get 20% off your first order plus free shipping, go to MeUndies.com/Bellular, click the link down below, and use promo code Bellular. Blizzard have got a few fixes for the anniversary event, so first up, Codex of Chromie can now happen with just 1 tank, 1 healer, and 8 DPS. I've even seen queues of just 3 minutes, which is a massive change from the previous version that, it would have 30-minute queues, sometimes 40-minute queues. It was really stupid. Now, not many of us are doing this event all of the time, but if you were just doing it daily for the sake of some war-bound veteran gear, then yes, this will definitely save you some time. The other thing that's changed with the event is Blackrock Depths. It now might have reasonable difficulty. It actually launched both overtuned in general, but also particularly overtuned depending on your group size, especially for smaller groups. Now, Blizzard's first tuning wave basically tackled both of these, and to make a whole long story short, there are reductions in health and damage from 10 to 40% across loads of things, especially in normal mode. It's absolutely been cut to ribbons, but that's because it did not really launch in a finished state. So far, that's it for event changes, but based on how things like the tokens have been received, I wouldn't be surprised if Blizzard makes some changes fairly shortly. What is definitely changing, though, is classes. Classes launched in a mess, and so far we've had multiple waves of class bug fixes for, well, just about everybody. In a few cases, that really shook things up. As an example, we saw big hits to Blood and Frost DKs. We saw hits to Mages, where the nerfs to Arcane ended up clipping Frost, which meant that Frost was just straight down to the bottom. But what is more interesting is they say a systemic issue has been fixed in their end, and this issue led to existing changes being missing from 11.05, essentially whenever PTR and live game get smooshed together. Now, we don't know if this is technical, like actual their own systems, like their tooling, or if it's more of a procedural thing like crossed wires or miscommunications, but either way, they seem to have said that the underlying problem has been solved, so I guess we can hope that future patches that have got class changes will lead to a little bit less chaos. That being said though, on the first reset, there is a humongous wave of class balancing. We absolutely have to talk about it. Blood DKs, enjoy your unnerf. So the damage of Blood Boil is up 15%, Heart Strike 20%, Blood Plague 10%, and Death Strike 20%. That'll be quite nice. Sand Lane also gets a nice little buff. And then the Balanced Druids, fresh off some changes in this patch, do get baseline buffs. Wrath, Starfire, Star Surge, and Starfall are all up 5 to 10%, and Blizzard are trying to make some of the talents a bit more viable. As an example, Shooting and Crashing Stars are up 20%, Touch of the Cosmos' proc chances are up, Power of Goldrune is up 25%, and we've seen slight nerfs to Rattle the Stars and New Moon. So basically, they want some things to be a little bit more reined in, some things to be more viable. Then Resto gets a Dream of Scenarios buff that doubles the damage to healing transfer from Wrath and Shred, and increases the same for Starfire and Swipe from 33 to 50%. So it's pretty good. Next though, Hunters are real interesting. So, Beast Mastery Hunters, you know the way you guys kind of went from, here, like lower middle of the pack in Warcraft logs, straight to the top or near the top? Yeah, that wasn't intended, so get ready for this. Okay, first, one of the Dark Ranger talents, Bleak Powder, would cause arrows to explode whenever Beast Cleaver trick shots were active, but so much so that the explosion would be a single target DPS gain. That has been fixed. Bleak Powder now does not damage your primary target anymore, so it's only an AoE thing. Beast Mastery then sees a 25% cut to Barbed Shot, but it has AoE buffs to round them out a bit more. They are a 50% buff to the Stomp damage, 100% to Multi-Shot, and Explosive Venom now procs 2 stacks earlier and more consistently applies Serpent Sting. For Marksmanship though, things are quite weird. So Blizzard say they feel that Dark Ranger single target's too strong, so they've taken Black Arrow down by 10%, but Bleak Powder and Shadow Surge are up 25% to round out its AoE a bit more, and Sentinel's Symphonic Arsenal is up 15%. Now, that's Blizzard basically saying Dark Ranger needs to be a little bit more powerful, but it's also a little too powerful in single target. Which is kind of odd, because currently that's not the case. Like, Sentinel seems to win out significantly in just about every scenario, so I'm confused by these changes. I'm a bit suspicious. I don't really know what's going on there. We'll have to see how it shakes out in live. Mistweavers then, you guys get a fairly interesting one. Basically, a 6% healing increase. You get buffs to Awaken Jadefire Teachings, and Rushing Wind Kicks damage, and Renewing Mist healing increase, and a 400% healing increase to Yulon's Whisper. But there's a reason why you've got all of that buffs. What Blizzard have done is they've nerfed part of Jade Bond. It now increases the Gust of Mist healing by 20% rather than 60%. And that's basically because a build that heavily leaned on their mastery, and the Chi-Ji cooldown reduction of that talent basically was getting a little bit too powerful. So what they've done is they've kept the cooldown reduction because they like the gameplay feel, which all sounds great, but there is of course no free lunch. What'll sting is the reason why you got all of those buffs, and it's Jade Bond. So Jade Bond now increases Gust of Mist, which is your mastery. It increases its healing by 20%. Rather than 60%, which is quite significant. Blizzard basically said that it ended up being too powerful, but the good news is that the cooldown reduction for Chi-Ji, part of that talent, is still intact. Basically, Blizzard thought that whenever you were in that Chi-Ji mastery build, its numbers were overtuned, but they liked the gameplay feel, so they've basically took some of your throughput from that, but they've then redistributed that to the rest of your spells. That's what it's supposed to be in theory anyway. Next, my Dragonflight main, the Disciplined Priest, which is a spec always in flux. This time, well, Radiance is up 20%, Flash Heal is up 15%, and there's a 1-second buff to Preemptive Care and 5% increase to Premonition of Piety. Basically, more direct healing, because, yeah, it's Disc Priest, and it's impossible to get Atonement healing perfectly balanced and right. Next, Shamans. You guys were not entirely balanced and right. Oh boy. Blizzard's post says that Enhancement and Elemental performed above their tuning goals. Yeah, as in, they went straight to the top of the DPS rankings with 1105, especially with a few bugs helping them out in some instances. What's happening then is Elemental gets a substantial buff to its Farseer tree, while Stormbringer gets nerfed. You get 1 instant Chain Lightning from Arc Discharge down from 2, and Voltaic Surge's damage increase is down to 5% from 15, which is pretty painful. Then Elemental Overload, well, Elemental Overload damage increases are substantially down. The one you get from Echo Chamber is from 40% to 20%, and the one from Ascendance is from 150% to 100%. The Ascendance haste buff from Preeminence is also down to 20% from 25, and Ice Fury got buffed. It's now 200% Frost Shock damage, up from 150, which will be great news for the people who really hate that talent. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed your week of just absolute absurd, goofy power. As for Enhancement, you guys get a smaller nerf maybe. Basically, Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning are down 10%, and the Tempest Stormbringer talent is down by 15%. Meanwhile then, Warlocks, well, you guys actually get some pretty good news. You get single target buffs, you get AoE buffs, and you totally needed them. 1105 actually has all 3 specs at the bottom of the pack across Naru Bar, but where it really matters is for the Demonology Warlocks, because you guys get an end to a drama that majorly featured in the beta. The new change is that your Call Dreadstalkers have a 100% chance to give you a Demonic Core, up from 50. This is really good. Basically, Blizzard didn't like when you were getting too many of those and you essentially were really mobile with lots of instant cast spells. Unfortunately for Blizzard though, while I understand the design reason there, they don't want you to be too powerful, well, it just turns out that the movement is fun, and one of the main ways that Blizzard designs their game is around movement, which could make Demonology feel a little bit shit. Plus, I think people like a bit of consistency, so the 100%'s good. Other changes for you guys include the Grimoire Felguard damage increase now being 125%, up from 60. Hand of Gul'dan gets a nice little 25% buff, and Call Dreadstalkers gets 20%. So, all of that will feel pretty damn good. Moving on to Destro then, you guys get loads of buffs. 25% to Hellcaller's Wither, Immolate and Confragate, 20% to Rain of Fire and Incinerate, and 10% to Chaos Bolt. As for Affliction, you guys get a 15% buff to Agony, 25% to Corruption, 20% to Unstable Affliction, and you also get the 25% buff to Wither on the Hellcaller hero talents. Lastly, on the Warriors, basically you guys get a 10% buff to Executor across the board, and to put it simply, Arms and Fury both get 10 to 25% buffs across many parts of their core kits. Now I should say, these are all the PvE changes. If you're a PvPer and you just shat yourself, don't worry, there are a bunch of other PvP changes as well. That being said, there is a whole raft of things to do from now until November 8th, so let's talk about Hallow's End. Hallow's End's pretty damn good this year. We've got new rewards, and that's of course on top of last year's refresh. What you can get here then is, number 1, another 10% XP and rat buffs, which is pretty good. There's a full new transmog set, and one of the coolest looking head, mask, and cloak combos a Blizzard have ever made. I think it looks awesome. Now to start with this, go to either Stormwind or the Undercity. At the gates you'll find the Wicker Man along with the vendors and quest givers. When you're there, you can pick up the 2-hour XP and rep bonus by just clicking on the bonfire and burning the Wicker Man. Then you can spin around and check out the new vendors. 2024 adds the Wicker Man back and claw for 100 treats each, and the Prowler's faded headgear and shoulder cape, which cost 150 and 100. More on the treats later, because for the rest of that transmog set, you gotta do the Headless Horseman, and actually it works in a pretty good way this time. Now the previous rewards for the Headless Horseman, which are of course the Horseman's Reins, the Slicer, the Hood, Arthas, those things are still there, but now you'll get part of the patched Harvest Golem set with every kill. And the way this works is shockingly, nice for a Blizzard thing. It's a 100% drop rate, and it will always drop a piece that you do not have. And even better, this actually works across alts. Now, as for the exciting rewards, well, your first kill of the day on your account has got a higher chance of dropping that mount, and to get an even higher chance, you just need to activate the 4 curses by clicking on the 4 Wicker Men that are at the entrance of the dungeon. So basically, do that daily and good luck. It still is an extremely rare mount, but as you do that daily or just do it on your alts, you will be able to pick up that new transmog set that looks real damn cool. Also, you'll be able to get a few treats from every kill, and he also drops an eye level 584 ring that can be upgraded all the way to eye level 610. With that said, we're going to need treats. The candy buckets are of course our main source. Every inn's got a bucket, and that does include Kazalgar, which has got 18 new buckets. You'll get 1 to 3 treats per bucket, and game-wide there are 169 for the Alliance and 174 for the Horde. Of course, dragon riding makes this so much nicer, but it's technically not the only way. The dailies outside the Wicker Man are worth 9 per day, and there is a quest line that will award you with 10 in total. Then there's the Shade of the Horseman event that can be quickly knocked out in the newbie towns, which are normally Brill and Goldshire, and there is a daily in Legion Dalaran that's worth a few. But look, big picture, the lion's share are going to come from the candy buckets. Now, to state the obvious, 450 is quite a lot, but it is absolutely something that you can just go and do in one character. It'll take a bit. But what's nice here is there's no time gating here. You can just go and blast this out in a few settings. It is very much not like the way the tokens work for the anniversary event. I'll certainly be doing it. I think those new rewards look absolutely fantastic. And while you're doing that, try watching this video next. It dives into the new dialogue that was added in this very patch that heavily points towards where we will be going next in the storyline of this expansion.